They say the deepest fear doesn't come from monsters, but from the cracks in reality. From those moments when the world stops making sense, and you find yourself wondering if everything you take for granted is just an illusion. Today, I bring you stories about those cracks. If you like stories that make you question what you see, subscribe to our channel. And if after listening you can't sleep, don't say I didn't warn you. I never should have taken that night shift. But back then, I didn't know that. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to listen to that part of me that already understood something wasn't right. I'd been working at the mechanical workshop for almost 2 years. Machine tool fitter engineer, a title that sounds more important than it really is. In practice, you were the one who solved the problems the operators couldn't or wouldn't solve. The one who stayed late when something failed. The one who never said no, because in the system, you didn't say no. Workshop number 7 was one of 12 that made up the plant. 12 industrial bays like 12 concrete boxes forgotten in the middle of nowhere. Production of castings, heavy industry, the kind of place where the air smells of burnt oil and cold metal, even in summer. Yuri Nikolaevich was the workshop foreman, a man in his 60s with completely white hair and a gray suit that must have been elegant in another decade. Now it just looked tired, like everything in that building. Starting next week, you're going to nights, he said, pointing at me with his finger, as if he were choosing an object among others. There was no consultation, no negotiation, just an order. Yuri Nikolaevich knew his trade. The veterans said that before, when he was an engineer like us, he'd been a good man, that he hadn't gotten the position through flattery, but through merit. But the job had changed him, made him dry, sharp, like a rusty nail. Yes, Yuri Nikolaevich, I replied, my voice flat. Inside, I was boiling. But boiling didn't do any good. I'd finished university 2 years ago. Like all graduates, I was required to complete a mandatory work period. 2 years in my specialty. In theory, you could look for another place. In practice, no one wanted to hire a fresh graduate with no experience. And state enterprises were the only ones that would take you, because everyone who could escape, escaped. The system caught you with one hand and paid you with the other. If you quit before time, you had to repay the cost of your education, an impossible sum for a newly qualified worker. So you stayed, you did what you were told, and you kept your mouth shut. That's what I did, kept my mouth shut and kept my head down. In the office, there were 7 of us engineers. I was the youngest. The other 6 were middle-aged men, toughened by years of shifts and silences. None of them complained openly. They'd already learned that complaining changes nothing. The workshop was immense. 12 bays, 12 worlds separated by concrete walls. Each section had its own metal door, its own electrical system, its own water and compressed air supply. And when the door closed, each section became a bubble isolated from the rest. That night, the only people in the entire bay were me and 2 operators, Sanya and Seryozha, 2 guys in their 20s, like me. They took turns watching the machine. I was there to fix problems if they came up, but problems don't always come from machines. Why so serious? Asked Volodya, the electrician, as he lit a cigarette in the smoking room. They put me on nights, I replied, without looking up. Volodya let out a short laugh. Ah, then you're going to meet the Black Turner. The what? The other men in the room laughed. It wasn't a mocking laugh. It was the laugh of people who know an old joke and are waiting to see the newbie's reaction. There's a legend, said Sanich, the oldest electrician, as he exhaled a cloud of smoke. A big man with graying hair and thick mustaches. His voice was deep, like the rumble of an old engine. They say that many years ago, back in Soviet times, there was an accident here. A turner was caught by his own machine. He paused, not to build tension, but because his cigarette had gone out. He relit it. There wasn't much left of him, to be honest. A sack of bones and flesh. Unrecognizable. And? I asked, impatient. The problem, Sanich continued unhurried, is that it wasn't his shift. He'd swapped with a co-worker. That co-worker knew the machine was faulty, but he didn't say anything. He wanted the other guy to take the blame for the breakdown, so he went home and the other guy took his place. Sanich stubbed out his cigarette against the wall. Ever since then, they say the Black Turner wanders the plant looking for the one who should have been there, the one who should have died in his place. Silence settled in the room. It was a dense silence, like the smoke. Have you seen him? I asked, almost in a whisper. Sanich stared at me. For a moment, his face turned serious. Then a slow smile spread across his mustache. Of course I've seen him, he said, and his voice shifted. We have beers together. All Turners are black, aren't they? Laughter erupted. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, relieved. But something in the way Sanich had said that, in the pause before the punchline, stayed with me, turning over in my head. They're just stories to scare the new guys, said Sanich, getting up and stubbing out his butt. 1 week and another newbie will come along. He walked out of the room. The others followed, one by one. I was left alone with the smoke and the echo of his words. On Friday, I finished my day shift. I slept Saturday and Sunday. Monday at 8 in the evening, I had to report in. I woke up early, even though I didn't need to. The nervousness had woken me at 6. I had breakfast in silence. I checked the clock every 10 minutes. At 8:30, I left the house. The bus ride took an hour. It was November. The sky darkened early. A fine rain covered the asphalt, and dead leaves stuck to the sidewalks like stains. I don't know why, but I've always felt something akin to affection for this kind of weather. There's a melancholy in the air that feels familiar to me. I got to the plant at 9:30. It was already dark. The place looked different at night. Empty. The bays, which during the day buzzed with the noise of machines and the shouts of workers, were now silent. There was no movement, no lights except for the emergency ones. I walked 15 minutes from the entrance to the workshop. My footsteps echoed on the wet asphalt. The sound faded between the buildings as if the darkness absorbed it. Workshop number 7 was in semi-darkness. Only one door was open, and from it came a strip of yellow light. There I found Sanya and Seryozha. So, until 12, and then sleep? Asked Sanya, smiling. I'd sleep now if I could, I replied. You can, said Seryozha. We're the ones who have to watch the machine. Take turns, I suggested. One sleeps, the other watches. Look, Sanya, said Seryozha, laughing. This one's the smartest. I shrugged. I wasn't smart. I was just tired. And something about the atmosphere of the empty bay made me feel uneasy, as if we weren't alone. I went to the office, made myself a coffee, lit a cigarette. The clock showed 11 at night. The office was small, with 2 metal desks, a bookshelf full of blueprints, and a rotary phone on the wall. The numbers were worn from use. The coffee was bitter. The cigarette tasted like ash. But it was better than being out in the bay, listening to the echo of the operator's footsteps. At 3 in the morning, the phone rang. I picked it up. Yes? Hello? Said a voice. It was an old man's voice, soft, almost kind, like a grandfather in a children's story. We need help in Workshop 5. This is Workshop 7, I replied. Call Workshop 5. I hung up. I didn't think much of it. Someone must have dialed the wrong number. The next day, as I walked toward the entrance, I saw Dima, my university classmate. Hey, what are you doing here? I asked, extending my hand. They put me on the night shift too, he replied, shaking it. I see they got you too. Yeah, mandatory work. We walked together toward the bays. He veered off toward Workshop 5. Hey, I didn't see you yesterday, I said. Did you come earlier or later? I didn't come yesterday, Dima replied. Someone else was supposed to come, but he didn't make it. Well, he didn't make it out of the shift. What do you mean, didn't make it out? Dima shrugged. He came in at night, but he never left through the main gate. His entry log is there, but the exit log isn't. No one saw him leave. The boss told me to go sleep and come back tonight. I don't know what happened. That guy was a drunk. Maybe he went over the fence or did something crazy. Did they try calling him? Yeah, no answer. We stood in silence. Well, said Dima, breaking the moment, if you need anything, you know, like in the cartoon. He smiled and stepped into Workshop 5. I kept walking toward Workshop 7, but something wouldn't leave me alone. That voice on the phone, the missing operator, Sonich's joke, and the feeling that someone was watching us from the shadows. The second night was the same as the first. Sonia and Seryozha taking turns, me in the office, coffee and cigarettes, the empty bay, the silence. At 2:30, the phone rang again. "Hello?" said the same old man's voice. "We need help in Workshop 5. "This is Workshop 7, I repeated more firmly. "Call Workshop 5. "There's no one in Workshop 5, said the voice. "Yes, there is. A friend of mine is there." "There's no one," the voice insisted, and it hung up. I stared at the phone. Something in the old man's tone had unsettled me. It wasn't a threat. It was certainty, as if he knew something I didn't. I dialed Dima's number. No answer. I waited 5 minutes and called again. Still nothing. I stood up, grabbed my work jacket, and walked out. The corridor between the bays was dark. My footsteps sounded on the concrete floor. The emergency lights were dim, barely enough to see the way. I reached Workshop 5. The main door was open. I walked in. Dima was asleep at his desk, his head resting on his arms. He was snoring softly. "Hey, wake up!" I shouted, banging on the desk. Dima jumped. "I'm not sleeping," he mumbled. "I'm working." He blinked, confused. "What are you doing here?" "I got calls from your workshop twice," I said, "asking for help." "Who?" "I don't know, an old man." Dima rubbed his eyes. "I didn't hear anything." "Well, you were asleep." "I wasn't asleep, I was—" Yeah, I interrupted. "Let's take a walk around the workshop, see if anyone's there." We walked together through the bay. The machines were off, everything in order. "Look," said Dima, pointing to a door at the end of the corridor. "That's section 15, but it shouldn't be running." "There's light," I said, and it was true. A yellow line was seeping out from under the door. We approached, opened the door. Section 15 was a small space. Only one machine occupied the center, an old lathe, the kind no one used anymore. It was running. It turned slowly, making a monotonous noise. On the plate, a piece of rusted metal spun aimlessly. There was no one there. "Who turned this on?" asked Dima. I didn't know. We waited 40 minutes. The cold seeped into our bones. I tucked my hands into the sleeves of my jacket, crossing my arms over my chest. The sleeves hung empty, as if I had no arms. No one came. "Turn this off and let's go," I said. Dima nodded and walked toward the main switch. As he walked, I heard a noise behind the machine, something like dragging footsteps, a moan. I thought it was the echo of Dima's footsteps. I approached the lathe. I wanted to see the operating instructions. There were none. When I rounded the machine, something hit me hard from the side. I lost my balance and fell toward the lathe. The empty sleeve of my jacket caught on the spinning piece. It started to wind up. In a second, everything stopped. Dima had turned off the machine just in time. I lay on the floor, trembling. Cold sweat soaked my back. My mouth was dry. "What the hell did you do?" Dima shouted, approaching with his phone's flashlight. "Are you crazy? Can't you see what could have happened?" "Someone pushed me," I said, my voice broken. "Something pushed me." "What something?" "I don't know." Dima helped me up. My hands were shaking so much I couldn't untangle the sleeve. "Let's go," he said, his voice softer. "Get your sleeve out and let's get out of here." We did. We walked in silence back to our offices. We didn't say goodbye. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I stayed smoking, cigarette after cigarette, until the sky began to lighten. The next day at home, I tried to rationalize what had happened. I don't believe in ghosts. I never have. My mind searched for logical explanations. The machine running, An oversight. Someone had left it on. The operators from previous days, maybe. The push, an oil stain. My feet slipped. Fear made me imagine contact, the calls, a prank by some bored worker. But the old man's voice stayed in my head. It didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like a warning. That night, I went back to the plant. The ritual was always the same. Greet the operators, coffee, cigarette, wait. At 2 a.m, the phone rang. "Hello," said the old man. "We need help in workshop 5. "Enough already," I said, raising my voice. "This joke isn't funny anymore." "There's no one in workshop 5, he replied, with the same calm as always. "Don't call me anymore," I said, and hung up. But the anxiety didn't go away. I called Dima. No answer. Asleep again, I thought. But something told me no. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, but this time, before going out, I called Sonia. "Hey, want to go out for a smoke?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "I'm tired. I need to clear my head." "Sure," said Sonia. In the smoking room, I lit a cigarette. Sonia looked at me. "What's wrong? You look nervous." "Someone's playing a prank on me. They call from workshop 5 asking for help, and when I go, no one's there." Sonia smiled. "Stupid people are everywhere." "Hey," I said, swallowing, "do you want to come with me to workshop 5? I want to see who's doing this." Sonia hesitated for a moment, then nodded. We walked toward workshop 5. The closer we got, the heavier the air became. My legs moved on their own, as if someone was pushing them from behind. We entered Dima's office. He wasn't there. On the desk, a half-drunk cup of tea, his phone with an app open, but he wasn't there. "Maybe he went to the bathroom?" asked Sonia. "I don't know. Let's look in the bay." I didn't want to go. Every fiber of my body screamed not to go, but I went. The bay was empty. Section 1, empty. Section 4, empty. The machines on, the tools in place, but no people. Then Sonia saw the light. "There," he said, pointing to Section 15, the damn Section 15. "Let's go," he said. "Wait," I said. "I'm going to the bathroom. You go, I'll catch up." I hid behind a pillar. From there, I watched Sonia walk toward the door of Section 15. He opened it, went in. I waited. 1 second, 2, 3, then a scream, short, muffled, as if his voice had been ripped out in one tug, and then the crunch, a wet, metallic sound, the noise of bones breaking, and again, silence. I peeked in. The lathe was slowly stopping. On the metal piece something hung, something that swayed with a gentle motion, like a piece of clothing in the wind. Sonia's body, or what was left of it. And then, from the back of the section, something began to move. It came out of the shadows. It was a figure. It looked human, but it wasn't. Its limbs bent at impossible angles. Its neck tilted to one side, as if the head were about to fall off. The skin was a mosaic of torn tissues, exposed bones, flesh of a grayish color. It walked slowly, dragging its feet, like an old man, like the voice on the phone. It stopped in front of Sonia's body. It unhooked it from the metal piece with a dry motion, like taking a jacket off a hanger. It shook it, straightening its broken limbs. And then it spoke. Its voice was the same one I'd heard 3 nights in a row on the phone. "It's not him. It's not you." It repeated the phrase over and over as it carried Sonia's body over its shoulder. "It's not him. It's not you." And it disappeared into the darkness of Section 15. I stood frozen. My legs wouldn't respond. My mind had gone completely blank. When the figure vanished into the gloom, my feet began to move on their own, first slowly, then faster. By the time I reached the corridor, I was running. I didn't stop until I reached my office. I locked the door, leaned my back against it, and slid to the floor. I cried, not like a man, like a child, with sobs that shook my chest and left me breathless. I didn't know what to do. If I told, they'd think I was crazy. If I didn't, the guilt would eat me alive. And then the phone rang, not the wall phone, the mobile. I'd left it on the desk. Seryoja. I swallowed, took a deep breath. answered with the calmest voice I could manage. "Where are you guys?" asked Seryozha with a reproachful tone. "I haven't seen you for a while." "Sanya went to workshop 5, I said, and the lie came out with a naturalness that scared me. "He said he was going to look for someone." "Workshop 5? Why?" "I don't know. Go find him." I hung up. Seryozha took 20 minutes to arrive. I knew because Sanya's mobile started ringing, and then mine. Missed calls. I didn't answer. The wall phone remained silent. The next morning, the police arrived. 6 missing in 3 nights. 2 operators, 3 engineers from other workshops, and Dima. Seryozha, too. Only I was still there. They interrogated me for days. The prosecutor came to see me almost every afternoon, but they had nothing on me, no evidence, only my word, and the phone recordings that showed nothing more than incoming calls. I told them what I'd seen. They didn't believe me. I couldn't blame them. I couldn't believe it myself. A month after the incident, I was in the smoking room. The electricians were talking about Sonic. "He quit a month ago," said one of them. "Why?" I asked. "He was tired. He'd had a hard life. He first worked here as a laborer, then he was in prison in the 90s, and then he came back." "Prison?" "Yeah, for an accident. Something happened at the plant. A man died. Sonic was involved, they say. I don't know the details. The director at the time helped him get out, got him the electrician job in exchange for his silence. I didn't ask more." That night, at home, I searched online. I found a news article from 1992, a black and white photo. Sanic, younger, without the mustache, but recognizable. The article read, "At the foundry plant, in workshop number 5, section 15, a fatal accident occurred. During an argument between workers, one of them pushed the other against a lathe. The body was left unrecognizable. The worker Vasily Alexandrovich Semyonov was sentenced to 5 years in prison." Sonic. The black turner isn't looking for the one who should have died. He's looking for the one who killed him. And I, without knowing it, had been there, had seen him, had heard him. Now, every time a phone rings, I hesitate before answering, because I know that voice, sooner or later, will call again, and this time, maybe, I won't be on the other side. It all began in 1959. 2 years earlier, I was the most ordinary party functionary you could imagine, the kind that gets lost in the crowd at district meetings. I met my quotas, signed my reports, never caused any trouble. But I wanted more. I wanted respect. I wanted my colleagues to look at me with that silent nod reserved for those who've made it. I wanted my name to echo through the corridors of the committee. So I worked. 2 years of endless days, of perfect reports, of unshakable loyalty. And it worked. I was promoted to the party control committee, a position of real responsibility. I was no longer just another face in the shadows. Now I was at the center, where decisions were made. A month after my transfer, I was given an official car, not just any car. It was a GAZ-21 Volga, brand new, gleaming, as if it had just rolled off the assembly line. The chrome sparkled under the garage lights. The leather of the seat gave off that characteristic smell of top-tier Soviet automobiles, but something didn't fit. When I opened the door, I noticed a smell of tobacco, an old aroma not matching a new car. The crevices in the seats had dust, as if someone had been traveling in it for years. I was told to use it only for official missions. I didn't ask where it came from. It happened in late October. I had been in a small village, one of those anonymous settlements that dot the map of the Union, a meeting with local officials. Nothing special. Bureaucratic formalities, handshakes, empty promises. I finished at 11 at night. The report was ready. I could go home. I left the village around midnight. The road was empty. Only my headlights cut patches of asphalt out of the darkness. On both sides, the forest stretched like a black cloak. I was tired. My eyelids were heavy. I drove for what felt like an hour. Then another, and another. But the road didn't change. No crossroads, no signs, no villages. Just the straight line of asphalt. Endless. I looked at the dashboard clock. 2:17 a.m. I looked at my wristwatch. 2:17 a.m. Both faces were stopped. They hadn't moved for an hour. I turned on the radio, just static. A white hiss that seemed to come from nowhere. I kept driving. The forest grew denser. The trees leaned over the road like curious onlookers. The branches formed a dark tunnel above my head. And then I saw the sign. It was made of wood, old, nailed to a rusted post. The letters were burned into the board as if someone had engraved them with a red-hot iron. Kolkhoz of the Future, founded in 1987. I slammed on the brakes. 1987. That couldn't be. It was 1959. Khrushchev was in power. We were launching satellites into space. The 80s didn't exist yet. I got out of the car. The air was warm, humid. It didn't smell like autumn. It smelled like spring, like wet earth. I touched the sign. The wood was real. Moss grew in the cracks. Paint flaked off in sheets. And then I looked at the car. My Volga had changed. The paint was faded, the chrome rusted. The seats, worn and cracked, as if someone had traveled in them for decades. The smell of tobacco was overwhelming. And the license plate. It wasn't the one I remembered. Instead of the Moscow plate M0559, there was a dirty plate, almost illegible, CFCP0759. It wasn't my car. I got back in. The engine started with a cough, but it worked. I turned around, drove back the way I'd come. 15 minutes later, I was back in front of the same wooden bridge. The sign was gone. Only the burned letters on the empty board remained. There was no turning back. The radio crackled to life, a screech, and then a voice. Unmistakable, deep, with that metallic tone of state radio announcers. Levitan. Today, May 12th, 1994, in Moscow, the new... I froze. 1994. The voice cut off. The radio began playing music I didn't recognize. Synthesizers. A voice in English, in a melody I didn't understand. The forest closed in around me. Branches scratched the sides of the car, and then, without transition, day turned to night. A blink. And it was dark. No moon, no stars, only absolute blackness. My headlights barely pierced the shadow. The dashboard clock was moving, but in the opposite direction, slowly going backward. I drove for hours, days, I couldn't tell. The sky didn't change, until the road curved sharply to the left and I found myself on a dirt street. Wooden houses, fallen fences, an abandoned village. I stopped next to one of the houses. In the door frame, a piece of newspaper fluttered in the wind. I tore it off. Izvestia, March 6th, 1942. 1942. I was in the past, in the middle of the war. The car was even older. The steering wheel, worn as if invisible hands had touched it thousands of times. The smell of grease and oil permeated the interior, mixed with a scent of soldier's wool. The radio only played military marches. I tried to leave the village. Every road brought me back to the same place, over and over. There was no way out, so I gave up. In the trunk, I found old clothes, a work jacket, a woolen cap, a worn trench coat. I changed, left the car by a barn, and I went to the local Soviet. I introduced myself as an engineer. I said I'd gotten lost. They gave me lodging. I lived there for 12 years. I never touched the car again, but at night, when the village slept, I would sit in the driver's seat. I would turn on the radio, and I would listen to the future. They elected Gorbachev. The union disintegrated. They talked about the stock market, about computers, about mobile phones. I wrote it all down in a notebook, but I never told anyone. Who would have believed me? In 1959, on the calendar that the village followed, that the village always followed because time there was linear, even though I knew it wasn't the only time, I made a decision. I got into the car. The engine started on its own. The radio crackled to life, and it began to play a song. Moscow Nights. I looked at the dashboard. The clock read 2:17. When I left the village, the road was the same as always. Straight, endless, trees on both sides. But this time I saw lights in the distance. A truck. It passed beside me. It carried a Soviet license plate. New, shiny. I was back. It was October 1959. But I was no longer the same. I knew too much. I burned the notebook with all my notes. That very night. The next morning, I left the car in a scrapyard by the roadside. I called my superiors. I said the car had broken down, that I'd walked 5 kilometers to a checkpoint. They believed me. When I returned to the city, I went to the barber, I shaved, got a haircut. When I came out, I looked 5 years younger. My colleagues noticed the change. They asked. Sleepless nights, I said. The mission did me good. They smiled. They didn't ask further. I went back to the routine, to the reports, to the meetings, to life as usual. A week later, the GAZ-21 was decommissioned. Someone mentioned it had previously belonged to a special department, something about psychography and experimental temporality. Department 9. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. Years passed. Decades. I reached retirement. Silent, discreet. An old man who had lived too long. I never spoke again about that night, or the car, or the sign, or the radio. But one morning, at the bus stop in front of my house, I saw it. The GAZ-21, immaculate, gleaming, like new. I approached cautiously. The car was empty. On the front seat, a newspaper. Yellowed. Old. I picked it up. Izvestia. June 9th, 2025. I looked at the dashboard. The clock read 2:17, and I knew the journey wasn't over. I'd only paused. Now the car was waiting for me. It had always been waiting, and this time, perhaps, there would be no return.